All right, my friends, welcome back. This is going to be part 73 of my presentation on the flood of Noah's Ark. We're going to continue on with the fascinating insight into the Ice Age, And lastly, we looked at some evidence that there was glacial activity. Now we're going to start looking at some requirements. What is it? What's some requirements for an ice age? What do you got to have on the planet to get an ice age? And so that's what this video is, and maybe the next video. I don't know. We'll see how much information I can get through today, and then we'll pick it up on the next time. And so, but at any rate, let's look at this. Requirements for an ice age. One, you need cooler summers. Volcanic dust and aerosols in the stratosphere, I'll show you that here in just a minute where that is, cause cooler summers over the land. By the evidence of volcanic ash in ice age layers, volcanic activity continued for some time after the flood. Now, right here you got the atmospheric levels. Now, atmospheric layers. If for those of you that's been following along in my presentation, you've already seen this. You've already seen this when we were just getting into dating methods, the dating methods. If you haven't, just go back. I did a whole bunch of videos about different dating methods, kind of the idea, how they work and some of the problems with it. And so there is no real reliable dating method, guys. I'm going to tell you right now, there's nothing. And so it's all got its flaws and stuff. But, that's another soapbox speech for another time. But right here you got the exosphere, thermosphere, mesosphere, the stratosphere, which we just got through reading, the stratosphere, and then a troposphere. Well, right in this area here where you see is the stratosphere. That's it right there. Ice core samples taken from Greenland and Antarctica show abundant volcanic particles and acids in the sections associated with the Ice Age. Evidence of the replenishing of dust and aerosols into the stratosphere. Now, if you notice the picture right above there, I've got it numbered on how what the chain reaction would be. So you would have number one right there in the middle, volcanic dust and aerosols in the air for several years, which two, it would reflect the sunlight. It would reflect that from the dust and aerosols. And then three at the bottom there, you would end up getting cooler summers over large land areas. And so that right there would help the land cool off more, so you would get that ice age. And now when we think of volcanic activity, the first thing a lot of people are going to think of is Mount St. Helens. And I'm going to give you some things. A bulk of this video is going to be about Mount St. Helens, just to show you what volcanic activity can do. And now it's very remarkable. But it says here, dust blanketed 11 states, guys. One volcano. Dust blanketed 11 states and several Canadian provinces. This is one volcano. The earth was cooled by a fraction of a degree. Now, if you'll notice this globe right here, just to give you an insight, guys, one volcano, I got to back up here a little bit. One volcano caused the entire globe to cool by, it says here, by a fraction of a degree. And some of you might be saying, so what? Whoop-de-doo. That was one volcano, guys, for the whole planet. Can you imagine if there's volcanic activity going on all over the planet, which would have been happening at the time of the flood? Then you're going to get a whole lot more. And even afterwards is what they're saying here. It would have happened even for a few years. You're going to get, if one volcano cooled off the planet by a fraction of a degree, can you imagine if there's volcanic activity going on all around the planet, how that would affect the temperature of the entire earth. That's just amazing, guys. Just to think of what Mount St. Helens did for the entire planet. I mean, it's so hard for me to wrap my brains around how it affected the entire planet's temperature by a fraction of a degree. But you can see it more if you got multiple volcanoes going off, which Michael Ord is stating that it would have to happen over a period of a few years. You get off and on, you would have the aerosols being and the dust being replenished over and over again. But how that could happen and how that could cool the earth enough to have an ice age. And so, it's amazing. It really is amazing, because when you look at just Mount St. Helens alone, how it cooled the earth a fraction of a degree. That's just incredible. It's incredible evidence, but it just shows you just what one volcano can do. And so, but going on here, it says some towns were in complete darkness at midday. Now, this is some notes about Mount St. Helens catastrophe. May 18th, 1980, at 8:32 a.m., the initial blast. The blast speed was 650 miles per hour. The north side of the mountain was destroyed. And what we're going to do here is we'll show you that. You can see this. This right here was 22 days before the eruption. Look at that bulge, guys. Look at that. That is so scary. Do you know that there was people that they were trying to evacuate that area, and there was people that wouldn't listen? There's people that wouldn't listen to them, and those people died. And I'm sure they didn't even know what hit them when that thing blasted, going 650 miles per hour. I mean, that's just absolutely just amazing. But there was people that wouldn't listen, and they died. They're still there today. But at any rate, here's a picture of that exploding. Absolutely just amazing to behold. And it's just to see pictures of this is impressive indeed. But what happened is the landslide, it slid down. There was a landslide sliding down. And again, this is just one volcano. One volcano. Let's see. Over 230 square miles of forest was flattened. And here's a picture of some of this. Look at that, guys. Now remember, this is just one volcano. That is absolutely amazing. And you think of you walking in a forest, I do a lot of hiking and stuff, and I see trees. I mean, you think of the force it would take to flatten these things. It's just incredible. Absolutely just amazing. Just flattened. Douglas firs as tall as 200 feet were instantly stripped of their branches, snapped like toothpicks, and blown off their stumps. And up to 1 million logs fell into Spirit Lake. The water in Spirit Lake was temporarily pushed out of its basin and came crashing back into place, dragging over 1 million logs. 1 million logs. And you know what? When you get into some of this stuff, guys, and you look at some of the evidence of the flood, you can see how catastrophic it was, because they have found, scores and scores and scores and scores of stumps. Literally hundreds, if not thousands of stumps in areas where there's no tree. It's just a stump. And sometimes in some areas, there's no roots on the stumps. It was like those trees were just jerked right out of the ground, and the roots were just snapped off. But here's a picture of Spirit Lake. Estimated that over 1 million logs were washed into the lake. That is absolutely just incredible. But think, it stated that water had been splashed right out of there. It says, the water in Spirit Lake was temporarily pushed out of its basin and came crashing back into place, dragging over 1 million logs into the lake. That's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. When you think about that, if you see that circle right here, that's two people in a boat. But look at all those logs around there. And there's a picture of all the logs. That's just incredible. You can walk across the lake. Now, this picture here is a log mat in Spirit Lake of 2012. Those logs are still there. And the thing is, guys, these logs are rubbing up against each other, and they're rubbing the bark right off these trees. Many of the trees were floating upright, even though the bases were broken off. And you can see that. See, there's some of these trees are they're floating upright. And here's some more trees. An estimated 20,000 upright, fully submerged logs were on the floor of the lake by August 1985. They looked like a forest of trees buried in the mud. Many of the roots had been broken off. Many of the trees were falling at different intervals, giving the appearance of multiple forests. And we talked about that previously, how it looks like in some of these areas of the world where it looks like one forest was buried and another forest grew on top of it, and then that one was buried and another forest grew on top of that one. All these petrified trees and stuff like that. Well, this is how this happened. This is exactly how it's happened. Mount St. Helens was a good example on a smaller scale of what happened worldwide on the historical biblical world flood. And so these trees started falling down and sunk down, and then they were buried by the debris, even some of the bark and stuff, and then you got sediments and stuff that laid around it, and it looked like that trees or those trees grew in place and were buried in place. And actually they weren't. They were transported to that location. They floated down. They sunk into the waters, and then the sediments landed around it, and it gave that appearance of that. Radar and scuba divers found that many of the logs had become buried by more than 3 feet of sediment, while others were still resting on the floor of the lake. In just 5 years, many layers of upright trees were buried. It's hard for me to make heads or tails out of some of this, guys. I guess you got to have a radar scan, but I guess the white areas are the trees. I'm just taking a guess there. But any of you guys that are familiar with radar and scans and know how to read it, then you guys could see this more. But this right here is what they saw. The catastrophe and subsequent eruptions produced complex sediment layers up to 600 feet thick. Step Canyon. Let's see, March 19th, 1982, hot volcanic ash from another explosion from Mount St. Helens created a mud flow. When it reached the debris deposit from the initial eruption, the flow cut channels through the debris at a speed of 40 miles per hour. Individual canyons up to 140 feet deep, I did say deep, appeared in one day. It cut through meandering similar to the Grand Canyon. It cut through meandering similar to the Grand Canyon. This little Grand Canyon is 1/40th the size of the Grand Canyon. Small creeks run through the canyons. Geologists assume that in similar type canyons, that the creeks made the canyons through long processes of time. And that right there, they saw it happen instantly. With the initial eruption, 1,300 feet of its summit was blasted away and slid down the slopes, leaving a huge horseshoe-shaped crater. Lava began to flow out of the vent, and a dome began to appear. And right here is a picture. 5 times in subsequent months, the domes were destroyed by eruptions. The 6th dome took 6 years to build, October 18th, 1980 to October 26th, 1986. 17 lava flows with 2.6 billion cubic feet of lava built the new dome 1,150 feet high. A large sample was collected from the last lava flow, believed to have been from a lava flow in 1986, and that was collected in 1992. In 1996, samples were sent to a laboratory to be radiometric dated using the potassium argon method. The rock was only 10 years old, but a date given was 350,000 years old, and minerals within it were dated up to 2.4 million years old. And we went over some of these dating methods way back when in this presentation here. And so if you guys want to look back on that, you guys will see some of that. But you see how unreliable those dating methods are? That rock was only 10 years old, but it gave a date of 350,000 years old, and the minerals were within it. It was given dates of 2.4 million years old, and the rock's only 10 years old. How can that be? After studying evidence from before and after Mount St. Helens erupted, geologists observed that stratified rock, layers of rock formed over time, can accumulate in very short periods during a catastrophic conditions. In one area, 25 feet of stratified deposit accumulated and hardened within 3 hours. Within 3 hours. And now I will say this right now. There is evolutionists that I've spoken with that say that they don't believe like a uniformitarianist used to believe long ago. But they stated, and I spoke with one, guys, they stated that they believe that catastrophic conditions can happen, and that stratified layers can form in short periods of time, but they believe that it can happen millions of years ago. So it would be like 30 million years ago, a catastrophic incident happened and made these stratified layers in a short period of time, but that happened millions of years ago. They're still holding to the long geologic ages of time. Nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. They're still believing in those long areas. They're just compromising a little bit because they know that it doesn't make sense. It's ridiculous. And so they got to compromise somewhere, but they're still holding on to those long geologic ages. All right, my friends, we're going to stop right there. Kiki decided to join me as I was talking, and so she's on my lap. And but at any rate, guys, when we come back, we're going to continue on with the requirements of an ice age and show you some more really cool information. But you guys take care. I love you. We'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.